Happy 4th to you. To all of my American friends and family, happy 4th. I'm not doing anything today except cleaning house, but that's a good thing. The 4th, when you're alone, doesn't mean quite as much. You remember things, and what I remember is my childhood. The 4th of July in my childhood. Oh my goodness. My mom and I lived with my grandparents. My daddy was dead, and we lived with my grandparents and an aunt who had never married. So on the 4th of July, family would come in, and I remember my grandmother's brother. He lived in a little town not too far from us. It must have been 20 miles or so. But he would catch the train, and he would ride it down to the town that we lived in, and then he would walk down to the house, which is about 3 miles. But I remember seeing him coming down the road. I must have been 6 years old then. I remember seeing him coming down the road in his overalls and his little shirt with long sleeve, but he had rolled the cuffs up, to about right here. He had a tuft of white hair. He was bald up here, and his head was just framed in this white hair. He'd get to the house, and we'd all gather on the front porch. The front porch went all the way across the front of the house. And we'd gather out there, and we would start visiting. And he'd say, "Where's the lemons?" And so my grandmother would go in the house and get her churn, all nice and clean, and some lemons and sugar. And he'd go to the well, which was just there in the yard, draw up a bucket of water and put it in the churn. He would roll the lemons. Let me show you. He would roll them like this on the porch until they were so soft. And then he would squeeze all the lemon juice out of them, put them in the churn with the water and the sugar, and we would have the best lemonade. Oh, it was so good. We had to have ice cream too. Well, all of this, required ice. And the way you got ice in those days was you bought it in great big blocks, and you wrapped it in newspapers and quilts and things and took it to the house. And you had this, it was a wooden handle with this long, sharp metal stick coming out of it that was sharp on one end. And you would chop, chop, chop that block of ice. And you'd get enough. You would use it in the glasses for the lemonade. And you would also use it to put it in the ice cream maker. Now, by the time we all had eaten, the milk was usually pretty well gone. So my aunt would go down to the barn, and she'd call up our milk cow. She would give it a little bit of feed so it would stay still, and she would milk enough milk for us to have for ice cream. She'd bring it to the house, strain it through a strainer so that anything that was in there that didn't need to be in there would be in the strainer and not in the milk. And she would take it out and put it in. The ice cream maker was a wooden bucket with a metal bucket on the inside of it. And so she would pour that milk and sugar and vanilla into that metal container. Then ice was put all around it. And then the turning mechanism would be fastened down on top of that. And you'd sit there and you'd crank and you'd crank and you'd crank. I was too little to do the cranking, but I loved to sit. There would be a quilt on top of it to keep the ice from melting. And I would sit on that quilt on top of the ice cream maker while they turned and turned and turned until it was so hard to turn, you knew the ice cream was thick and creamy and ready to eat. So that is my 4th of July memory. And it is a very special, precious one to me. So I'm hoping you do something to celebrate our nation's independence today, and stay safe, be happy, and eat a little ice cream and drink a little lemonade.